chosen ones, lend your ears. They failed to mention it would feel like this, didn't they? That uncanny feeling creeping up your spine during the most mundane moments. That inexplicable knowing that defies logic. That palpable electric energy in the air that seems invisible to everyone else. Lately, you've been navigating your days, feeling as though you're existing in two separate realities. One foot remains anchored in the familiar, while the other stretches towards something just beyond your grasp. Something you intuitively know is there. And perhaps the strangest part is the unshakable sensation that you're the only one awake while the world around you sleepwalks. Let me share a truth that might seem improbable, yet is undeniably real. There are points in time where the veil separating the spiritual and natural realms thins, becomes almost see-through, nearly permeable. November 25th, 2025 is one of those junctures. Not for everyone, not for the masses, but for a specific group of individuals who have been marked, prepared, and positioned for something that has been developing in the unseen realm for longer than you can imagine. And if you're reading these words right now, if this device is in your hands at this precise moment, if your eyes are scanning these sentences while a voice within you screams, "Yes," then know this, you are not here by chance. What I am about to reveal may sound radical. It will challenge the very foundation of your understanding of how God operates. It will force you to question your readiness for what lies ahead. And in truth, that is precisely the intention. Because what is coming is not intended for the casual believer, the complacent Christian, the person who desires just enough of God to feel comforted, but not enough to be completely transformed. What is approaching is for those who have been broken down and rebuilt, for those who have walked through the fire and emerged smelling of smoke, but still standing strong, for those who have been isolated, tested, refined, and secretly prepared for a dimension of existence that most will never encounter. The signs have been appearing, haven't they? Not the obvious ones, not the kind that makes sense when you try to explain them to others, but the subtle, undeniable, unexplainable occurrences that you've been noticing while simultaneously trying to convince yourself they are insignificant. The strange dreams that feel more tangible than your waking life. The moments when time seems to compress or expand without reason. The conversations that feel scripted, as if someone else wrote the dialogue before you spoke it. The coincidences that ceased being coincidental several instances ago. You've been attempting to rationalize it, searching for logical explanations, trying not to sound delusional when the voice within you insists that something enormous is about to break forth. But what if I told you that your rational mind is currently the obstacle, that the very tool you're using to analyze and comprehend is precisely what's preventing you from perceiving what's truly transpiring? What if the signs you've been experiencing aren't random at all, but carefully orchestrated signals from a realm that operates on frequencies your logic cannot measure? There are 5 specific signs, rare, unusual, and often unsettling, that manifest in the lives of chosen ones immediately preceding a major divine shift. Not everyone perceives them. Most miss them entirely because they are searching for what they anticipate rather than perceiving what is actually present. But those prepared for this moment, those whose spiritual eyes have been opened through the crucible of suffering and surrender, those trained to see beyond the veil, recognize these signs instantly, and more importantly, they grasp their significance. If you've been experiencing what I'm about to describe, particularly if you've been experiencing multiple signs concurrently, then you need to understand something with unwavering clarity. You are not losing your sanity. You are not becoming paranoid. You are not over-interpreting random occurrences. You are, in fact, perceiving something real, something significant, something that is about to alter everything. And the reason it feels so intense, so overwhelming, so impossible to dismiss is that what's coming is proportionate to the intensity of the signs. The greater the shift, the stronger the signals. And chosen one, what's approaching you right now is monumental. Let me reveal the 5 signs to you. But heed my warning. Once you recognize them, once you see them clearly, once you understand their meaning, you cannot unsee them. You cannot feign ignorance. You cannot return to your sleepwalking state. The knowledge I'm about to impart carries responsibility. The awareness I'm about to awaken demands a response. So, before we proceed, ask yourself, am I truly ready to see what I've been sensing? Am I prepared to act on what I'm about to understand? Because comfort ends where revelation begins. The first sign, time distortion and prophetic déjà vu. You've been experiencing it with increasing frequency lately, those moments when you're absolutely certain you've lived this exact moment before. Not in a vague, this feels familiar way, but with startling, specific detail. You know what someone is about to say before they utter it. You predict precisely how a situation will unfold, and then watch it happen precisely as you foresaw. You have dreams at night that play out in reality days or weeks later with eerie accuracy. But it's more than just déjà vu. Time itself seems unstable around you lately. Minutes stretch into what feels like hours. Hours compress into what seems like minutes. You look at a clock, become absorbed in something, look back expecting significant time to have passed, and only 2 minutes have elapsed. Or the opposite. You glance away for what feels like a moment, and suddenly 30 minutes are gone. This isn't forgetfulness. This isn't distraction. This is something far more profound and far more significant than most people realize. What you're experiencing is your consciousness beginning to operate partially outside of linear time. You're perceiving moments before they manifest in the physical realm because your spirit is accessing information that exists in what some call the eternal now, that dimension where past, present, and future exist simultaneously, where God dwells outside the constraints of sequential time. This happens to chosen ones immediately before major shifts, because where you're going requires operating with prophetic awareness. The assignments coming to you demand that you perceive things before they're obvious, that you know things before they're revealed through natural means, that you sense what's approaching before it arrives. God is upgrading your perception of time itself, because your next season operates on a different frequency than your current one. The prophetic déjà vu intensifies as the shift approaches. You'll find yourself living moments you distinctly remember experiencing before. Not in this life, but perhaps in dreams, in visions, in fleeting glimpses that you couldn't understand when they came, but now recognize with startling clarity. It's disorienting. It can feel like you're losing your grip on reality, but actually, You're gaining access to a truer reality, one that exists beneath the surface of what most people perceive. When you experience these time distortions, these moments of prophetic knowing, these instances where you're certain you've already lived what's happening, don't dismiss them. Don't rationalize them away. Don't let skepticism convince you it's just your imagination. Document them. Write down what you see before it happens. Record the dreams. Note the predictions, because these aren't random glitches in your perception. These are heaven opening your eyes to dimensions of reality that will be essential for where you're going. The second sign, the systematic dismantling of your entire life structure. Everything is falling apart, not just one area, everything simultaneously. Your job situation is unstable or has ended completely. Relationships that you thought were permanent are dissolving. Financial structures that felt secure are crumbling. Plans you invested years building are collapsing. Identities you've held onto are being stripped away. And the most disturbing part, you can't stop it. No amount of effort, prayer, or attempting to hold things together is working. It's like watching a building you've lived in for years being systematically demolished while you're still inside it. This is the sign most people interpret as catastrophe when it's actually preparation. Most people panic when this happens. They assume they've done something wrong, that God is punishing them, that their faith failed, that they made terrible decisions, and now they're paying the price. They frantically try to rebuild what's crumbling, to resurrect what's dying, to hold together what's clearly meant to fall apart, and in doing so, they resist the very process that's preparing them for their shift. Here's what's really happening. God is clearing the decks. He's removing everything that belongs to your old season, because none of it, absolutely none of it, can come with you into your next season. The job you had, it was for who you were, not who you're becoming. The relationships that ended, they were aligned with your old frequency, and where you're going operates on a completely different frequency. The plans that collapsed, they were based on your understanding of your purpose before God revealed what your purpose actually is. The identities being stripped, they were costumes you wore to survive previous seasons, and there'll be suffocating limitations in the season approaching. This systematic dismantling feels like death because, in a sense, it is death. The death of the old you. The death of the life you built based on who you used to be. The death of everything that's become too small for what you're carrying. And death is never comfortable. It's never welcome. It's never something you'd choose if the choice were yours. But it's absolutely necessary because you can't birth the new while clinging to the old. You can't step into your future while your hands are full of your past. You can't become who you're meant to be while still holding on to who you've been. The timing of this dismantling is precise. It always happens immediately before major shifts. Always, without exception. God doesn't shift you into your new season while you're still comfortable in your old one. He doesn't open new doors while you're still trying to force old doors back open. He doesn't give you the new until you release the old. And sometimes, most times, actually, he has to forcefully pry your fingers off what you're clutching because you won't let go willingly. If your life feels like it's being systematically dismantled right now, if everything you built seems to be crumbling, if you're losing things you thought you'd never lose, you're not being destroyed, you're being cleared. The demolition isn't the end. It's the preparation for reconstruction. And what God is about to build in your life is so much greater than what's being torn down, that if you could see the blueprint, you'd help with the demolition instead of fighting against it. Stop trying to hold together what God is pulling apart. Stop attempting to resurrect what He's allowed to die. Stop fighting against the dismantling. Instead, surrender to it. Let go. Release your grip. Trust that the same God who's tearing down is also the God who's going to rebuild. And what He's building next will leave you breathless. The third sign: supernatural knowing without natural learning. Information is coming to you from nowhere. You suddenly understand things you never studied. You possess knowledge you never acquired through normal means. You have insights into people, situations, and circumstances that you couldn't possibly know naturally. You speak about subjects you've never researched and realize later that what you said was accurate, even though you have no idea how you knew it. It's like someone is downloading data directly into your consciousness, bypassing your intellect entirely. This isn't about being smart or educated. This is about accessing a stream of information that flows from a source beyond your mind. You're tapping into what some call divine intelligence, the mind of Christ, the wisdom that comes from above. And it's not occasional anymore. It's becoming frequent, almost constant. You'll be in conversation, and words come out of your mouth that you didn't plan to say. You'll face decisions and just know the right choice without being able to explain how you know. You'll encounter people and immediately perceive things about them, their wounds, their gifts, their true nature, that would normally take months of relationship to discover. This supernatural knowing often includes understanding spiritual dynamics that aren't visible to most people. You look at situations and immediately see the spiritual forces at work beneath the surface. You recognize spiritual assignments on people. You perceive when someone is under demonic influence. You sense when an atmosphere has been contaminated by witchcraft, manipulation, or control. You can feel the difference between someone speaking from their genuine spirit versus speaking from a wounded soul or a demonic stronghold. This heightened discernment is simultaneously a gift and a burden. It's a gift because it protects you, guides you, and positions you to operate with wisdom that others lack. It's a burden because once you see these things, you can't unsee them. Once you perceive what's really happening, you can't pretend you don't know. Once you recognize darkness masquerading as light, you can't participate in the deception, even when everyone around you seems fooled by it. The supernatural knowing increases exponentially as you approach your shift because where you're going demands it. The assignments waiting for you require wisdom beyond human education. The battles you're about to face need spiritual intelligence that comes only from direct revelation. The decisions ahead of you are too consequential to be made from human logic alone. God is connecting you to His frequency, tuning your receiver to hear what heaven is broadcasting, opening your eyes to see what's always been there, but you couldn't perceive until now. When you experience these moments of knowing without learning, when information flows through you that didn't originate in your mind, when you speak truth you never studied, pay attention. This isn't random. This is God upgrading your operating system. He's giving you access to intelligence networks that function beyond the limitations of human knowledge. And you're going to need every bit of that supernatural knowing for what's coming. The fourth sign, extreme isolation, followed by sudden, unexplainable connection. You've been alone, not just physically alone, though that's probably part of it, but spiritually, emotionally, mentally alone in ways that made you question everything. People who you thought would walk with you disappeared. Relationships you believed were solid dissolved. Friends stopped calling. Family stopped understanding. And you found yourself in a kind of isolation so profound that you wondered if you'd somehow become invisible, if you'd slipped into a dimension where no one could reach you and you couldn't reach anyone. That isolation wasn't random. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't evidence that something was wrong with you. It was divinely orchestrated protection and preparation. God was separating you from influences that would have interfered with the work He was doing in you. He was removing voices that would have talked you out of your calling. He was creating space where only His voice was loud enough to be heard. He was positioning you in a place of such profound aloneness with Him that your identity became anchored in Him alone, not in what others thought of you, not in your relationships, not in your roles, but in Him. But here's what's happening now. What signals the shift is imminent. That extreme isolation is suddenly lifting, and it's not lifting gradually. It's lifting abruptly. People are appearing in your life seemingly out of nowhere. Connections are being made that feel divinely orchestrated. Conversations are happening that carry unusual weight and significance. You're meeting individuals who immediately feel like they've known you forever, who understand you without explanation, who speak your language even though you just met them. These aren't random connections. These are divine assignments walking into your life. These are people who carry pieces of your next season. Some of them will be long-term allies who will walk with you for years in what's coming. Others will be brief messengers who deliver something specific and then exit. But all of them, every single one, is heaven-sent. They're part of the orchestration of your shift. They're confirmation that the isolation season is ending and the collaboration season is beginning. The contrast between the isolation and the sudden connection is stark, almost jarring. You went from feeling completely alone to suddenly being surrounded by meaningful relationships. You went from no one understanding you to meeting people who get you immediately. You went from wondering if you'd ever connect deeply with anyone again to finding yourself in conversations that feel like coming home. This rapid shift from isolation to connection isn't coincidental, it's strategic. The isolation prepared you. The connection is positioning you. And together, they're confirmation that you're right on the threshold of your major shift. When these divine connections appear, don't dismiss them. Don't hold them at arm's length because you're afraid of being hurt again. Don't let the wounds from past betrayals keep you from receiving the people God is sending now. These are different. These connections are a sign to your future, not reminiscent of your past. Trust your discernment. The same supernatural knowing that's been increasing will help you recognize which connections are divine and which are distractions. Not everyone who shows up is sent by God, but some definitely are. And recognizing the difference is crucial. The fifth sign, dreams and visions that feel more real than waking life. Your dreams have changed. They're not the normal random nonsensical dreams that fade by breakfast. These dreams are vivid, coherent, meaningful. They carry messages. They show you things. Sometimes beautiful things that fill you with hope. Sometimes terrifying things that shake you awake with your heart pounding. But whether beautiful or disturbing, they all have this quality of being intensely real, more real in some ways than your waking life. You wake up, and it takes you a moment to remember which realm is which, to reorient yourself to physical reality. Some of these dreams are clearly prophetic. You see future events before they happen. You receive warnings about situations to avoid or confirmations about paths to take. You meet people in dreams who then appear in your life days or weeks later. You experience scenarios that feel impossible when you dream them, but then play out exactly as you saw. These aren't your subconscious processing stress. These are your spirit receiving information from realms that exist outside of time. Other dreams are more symbolic, more mysterious. You're in places you've never been, but somehow recognize. You're doing things that make no sense in the natural, but carry profound meaning spiritually. You interact with beings, sometimes clearly angels, sometimes less defined, but undeniably not human. And when you wake, you carry this residue from the dream, this knowing that something significant happened while your body slept, that you were somewhere important, that you received something essential, even if you can't articulate what it was. The visions are even more striking. These come while you're fully awake, eyes open, but suddenly you're seeing beyond the physical realm. You see angels surrounding someone. You see demonic forces attempting to influence a situation. You see spiritual warfare playing out behind normal circumstances. You see the glory of God resting on a place or a person. And these aren't fleeting glimpses. They're sustained visions that last long enough for you to observe, understand, and sometimes interact with what you're seeing. This increase in dreams and visions happens before major shifts because God is pulling back the veil, letting you see beyond the limitations of physical perception. He's showing you realities that exist parallel to what most people can see. He's training your spiritual eyes to perceive dimensions that will be crucial for your next assignment. Because where you're going, you can't rely only on what your natural eyes show you. Where you're going, you need to see what's really happening, not just what appears to be happening. When you experience these dreams and visions, document them immediately. Keep a journal by your bed. Write down every detail you can remember the moment you wake, because these aren't just interesting experiences. They're intelligence briefings. They're strategic information. They're heaven showing you things you need to know, warning you about things you need to avoid, confirming things you need to trust, and the details matter. Sometimes a small detail you almost forgot to write down becomes the key to understanding a situation weeks later. The 5 signs don't operate in isolation. They work together, each one confirming and amplifying the others. The time distortions make you more sensitive to the prophetic dreams. The systematic dismantling creates space for the supernatural knowing. The isolation prepares you for the divine connections, and all of it together, all 5 signs converging simultaneously, creates an unmistakable confirmation that you're not imagining this, not making it up, not being overly spiritual. Something real is happening. Something massive is approaching. And November 25th, 2025 marks a threshold moment when what's been building in the spiritual realm breaks through into your physical reality. But you have to participate. You have to respond. You have to position yourself first. Stop resisting what's being dismantled in your life. The things falling apart need to fall apart. Let them go. The more you fight to hold together what God is pulling apart, the more painful the process becomes and the longer the transition takes. Surrender, release. Trust that what's being removed is making room for what's being given. Second, pay attention to the supernatural knowing when it comes. Don't dismiss insights because you can't explain them logically. Don't ignore downloads because they seem too good to be true. When God speaks, when revelation comes, when you just know something, trust it, act on it, move on it. That knowing is your navigation system for the shift. Third, embrace the divine connections appearing in your life. Be discerning, yes, but don't be so guarded that you reject the very people God is sending. These connections aren't random. They're assignments. Some carry resources you need. Some carry information that's crucial. Some are simply meant to walk beside you through what's coming. Honor them. Invest in them. Recognize their significance. Finally, create space in your life for what's approaching. You can't receive new things with full hands. You can't step into your next season while clutching your current one. Whatever you're holding, that you know you need to release relationships that have expired, activities that drain you without producing fruit, expectations that no longer serve you. Control you need to surrender. Let it go now. Make room. Clear the path. Prepare yourself. November 25th, 2025 isn't just another day. For those experiencing these 5 signs, for those who've been marked and prepared, for those whose eyes have been opened to see beyond the veil, this is your moment. This is your threshold. This is when everything shifts. The signs are clear. The moment is now, and you are ready. Step through. But there's something else you need to understand. Something most people miss entirely about divine shifts. They're not just personal. What's about to happen to you isn't only about you. The shift you're entering carries implications far beyond your individual life. You're not being upgraded simply so you can live more comfortably or finally get what you've been waiting for. You're being repositioned because there are assignments waiting that can't be fulfilled by who you were. There are people who need what you're about to carry. There are territories that require the authority you're about to walk in. This is why the preparation has been so intense. God doesn't put people through that. The degree of refinement you've shown in seemingly minor tasks isn't accidental. It reflects a deeper transformation, not just surface-level competence. The trials you've overcome were indispensable, meticulously designed to equip you for the monumental shift you're about to embrace. And this transition is so significant that opposing forces desperately tried to derail you before you even arrived at this point. Reflect on your journey over the past 1 or 2 years. Your growth has been intentional and purposeful. Every dark valley has imparted invaluable lessons, insights unattainable through any other means. Every betrayal has revealed the true nature of trust and strengthened your inner circle. Every loss has stripped away the superficial, allowing your authentic self to emerge. Every moment you felt like giving up, yet persevered, has forged an indomitable resilience, a quality that comfortable circumstances could never cultivate. You are not the same person you once were, and the impending shift is perfectly calibrated to align with the person you've become, not the one you used to be. Here's what you can anticipate as you cross this threshold. Your capacity will expand exponentially, initially creating a sense of being overwhelmed. You'll find yourself in circles and situations you never imagined possible. You'll wield influence that you didn't actively seek, yet cannot evade. You'll carry an authority that makes you a formidable force against the kingdom of darkness. You will operate with wisdom that transcends mere education, born from direct, divine insight. You'll speak words that carry extraordinary weight, words that shift atmospheres, dismantle strongholds, and unlock destinies in others. However, this expanded capacity also brings amplified responsibility. With greater authority comes intensified spiritual warfare. This is why your preparation season was so challenging, because what lies ahead requires someone who has been thoroughly tested, proven resilient, refined by fire, and strengthened beyond the experience of most believers. Some of you are experiencing a surge of fear right now. A part of you deeply desires this shift, while another part is gripped by terror. You fear you're not ready, that you'll fail, that the responsibility will crush you. And here's what I want you to understand: you're right. It is beyond your natural capacity. It is more than you can handle on your own. And that's precisely the point. God doesn't call you to tasks you can accomplish in your own strength. He calls you to those that require His supernatural power working through you. He doesn't position you for assignments you're naturally qualified for. He positions you for assignments that necessitate divine empowerment. And He doesn't wait until you feel ready. He propels you forward when He knows you're ready. Regardless of your feelings, understand that your emotions are deceiving you right now. Fear is whispering that you're inadequate, but chosen one. That voice is not wisdom. It's the desperate last stand of an adversary who knows he's about to lose his grip on you. Because once you cross this threshold, once you step into this shift, you become a threat to the enemy's plans in ways you've never been before. So, here's what I need you to do immediately. Make a decision, not based on your feelings, not based on your self-assessment of your readiness. I need you to decide that you will step through this threshold when it appears, that you will walk through this door when God opens it, that you will say yes to this shift, even though it terrifies you. Say it aloud right now, wherever you are. Speak these words: I'm ready. I receive the shift. I accept what God is releasing. I step into what He's prepared. I trust His timing. I embrace the assignment. I say yes. Your verbal declaration holds power. It's a covenant with heaven. It's signaling to the spiritual realm that you're positioned and willing. Your words possess creative force. They shift spiritual realities. They activate what's been dormant. So speak, declare, announce your readiness. Even if you don't yet feel ready, review those 5 signs. Count how many you're experiencing. If you're experiencing 3 or more simultaneously, understand this with absolute clarity. This message wasn't written for mere information. It was written for activation. You weren't led here to learn something interesting. You were led here because heaven is confirming what your spirit already knows. Your shift is here. Your moment has arrived. And November 25th, 2025 marks the threshold you're about to cross in the coming days. Pay close attention to everything, every conversation, every perceived coincidence, every person who crosses your path, every dream you have. God is communicating constantly, but most people miss it because they're not actively watching. You now know what to watch for. You know the signs. You understand the season. So stay alert, stay awake, stay sensitive to what God is doing. And when the moment comes, when the door opens, when the opportunity presents itself, when God says now, don't hesitate, don't overthink, don't wait for more confirmation. Move, step, walk through, because divine windows don't remain open indefinitely. I don't want you looking back 6 months from now with regret, wondering what might have happened if you'd been brave enough to step through when the door opened. You are not reading these words by accident. You are not experiencing these signs randomly. This is real. This is significant. This is your moment. And everything you've survived has been preparing you for exactly this. The isolation that almost broke you taught you to hear God's voice with unparalleled clarity. The betrayals that wounded you developed discernment that you couldn't have gained any other way. The losses that devastated you made room for something far greater. The battles that exhausted you built the spiritual strength you're about to need. The delays that frustrated you were God's perfect timing, precisely positioning all the pieces. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was meaningless. It was all preparation. And now, the preparation is complete. The testing is finished. The waiting is over. Your shift is here. So, chosen one, lift your head, take a deep breath, and get ready. Because November 25th, 2025 isn't just another day. It's your day, your threshold, your moment. And when you step into what God has prepared, you're going to look back at this moment and recognize it as the day everything changed. The signs are clear. The timing is now. And you are ready, not because you feel ready, but because God says you're ready. And His assessment is the only one that truly matters. If this message resonated deep within your spirit, if you're experiencing these signs, and you're ready to step into your shift, type, "I'm ready" in the comments right now. Let your declaration be witnessed. Let heaven see your faith. Your shift isn't coming, it's here. And you're about to step into a dimension of existence that will surpass everything you've ever imagined. This is your moment. Don't let it pass you by.